I've noticed the channel losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways to support me. It's quick, free, and ensures you keep getting awesome content. Your support means everything. Thank you so much. I never liked Valentine's Day. The whole thing felt like a forced celebration, an excuse for couples to flood every restaurant while the rest of us were left to scroll through social media, pretending it didn't bother us. That's why, when I got a message from someone named Eric on a dating app a week before February 14th, I almost ignored it. His profile was simple, one picture, a few vague details. Tall, athletic, worked in marketing. But his first message caught my attention. Eric, you don't know me, but I think we should meet. Weird opening line. I typed out a response and deleted it twice before settling on. Me, and why is that? His reply came almost instantly. Eric, because we already have. I frowned. His face wasn't familiar, and I was pretty sure I would have remembered meeting someone like him. I wasn't the type to get drunk and forget people. Me, I don't think so. Eric, we have. You just don't realize it yet. I was about to block him when he sent another message. Eric, let's meet for dinner. Valentine's Day. 7 p.m. Chez Martin. I stared at the message. Chez Martin was an upscale restaurant, way out of my price range. And he wasn't even asking. He was telling me. I should have blocked him. But instead, I typed. Me, fine. The whole thing was unsettling, but there was a strange pull to it. Something in my gut told me to say yes. That was my first mistake. When I arrived at the restaurant, Eric was already there, sitting at a corner table. He was even more attractive in person, sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, dressed in a dark suit. He stood when he saw me, smiling like we were old friends. I'm so glad you came, he said, pulling out my chair. I sat down, suddenly uncomfortable. There was something off about him. Not in the way he looked, but in the way he moved, like every action was too smooth, too rehearsed. You said we've met before, I said, cutting straight to the point. I don't remember you. He smiled. You wouldn't. I swallowed. What does that mean? The waiter arrived before he could answer, and Eric ordered for me. I didn't even have time to look at the menu. When the waiter left, Eric leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I don't want to scare you, he said. Then start making sense. He exhaled, shaking his head. I've seen you before. Many times. But not like this. I stared at him, confused. You always sit by the window when you eat alone, he continued. You walk fast, like you don't want anyone to catch up. And at night, you check your locks twice before you go to bed. A cold chill ran down my spine. How do you know that? I whispered. He tilted his head, watching me like I was something fragile. I've been waiting for the right time. My breath hitched. The right time for what? He smiled again. To tell you that we belong together. I stood so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Other diners turned to look. My heart was hammering in my chest. I'm leaving. He didn't stop me. But as I grabbed my bag, he spoke again, his voice calm. You can leave, but I'll still be watching. I didn't look back. That night, I barely slept. Every shadow in my apartment felt too dark, too heavy. Every creak of the building sent shivers through my spine. At 3:27 a.m., I woke up to a soft sound outside my window. Not knocking. Not scratching. Breathing. I sat up, heart racing, reaching for my phone. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see. But something inside me forced me to. I turned my head slowly. Eric was standing outside. My apartment was on the 4th floor. He shouldn't have been there. But he was. His face was too close to the glass, lips parted like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. I scrambled backward, my breath coming in gasps. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. When I looked back, he was gone. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They found nothing. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. Nothing on the security cameras. I tried to explain, but the officers exchanged looks that told me they didn't believe a word I said. Maybe you had a bad dream, one of them suggested. I knew I hadn't. Eric had been there. Watching. Waiting. For the next few days, I barely left my apartment. I ignored my phone, ignored the outside world. Then, on February 17th, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. A picture of me. Asleep in bed. Taken from inside my apartment. I screamed, dropping the letter, my entire body breaking into violent shivers. Then I saw the note, scrawled at the bottom in perfect handwriting. You can't avoid me forever. I ran. I packed a bag, left my apartment, booked a motel across the city. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I barely let myself breathe. For weeks, nothing happened. I started to believe I was safe. Then, last night, a text from an unknown number came through. No words. Just a photo. It was my motel room. Taken from the closet. I hadn't heard from Daniel in over a year. We broke up badly, messy, ugly, restraining order bad. He was charming at first, always knowing the right thing to say. But underneath, there was something wrong with him. He got jealous over little things. He'd show up unannounced, lurking outside my apartment, watching instead of knocking. When I finally left him, he wouldn't accept it. The text started. The calls. The threats. I had to change my number, move across the city, even get the police involved. Eventually, the messages stopped. I thought it was over. I was wrong. On Valentine's Day, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in perfect, familiar handwriting. Daniel's handwriting. I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at the envelope in my shaking hands. I almost didn't open it. I shouldn't have opened it. Inside was a single note. I found you. My breath caught in my throat. My stomach twisted into a cold, sick knot. I dropped the letter, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. No. He wasn't supposed to know where I lived. I backed away from the kitchen table, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. The operator's voice was calm. Too calm. Has this person contacted you directly? I swallowed hard. Not until now. Did he make a threat? I looked down at the note again. I found you. I didn't know how to answer that. We can send a patrol car to check the area, the dispatcher said. But without an immediate threat, there's not much else we can do. I hung up, my hands still shaking. That night, I triple-checked my locks, pulled the curtains shut, and sat awake in my bed, staring at the shadows in my room. I barely slept. And when I woke up, there was another letter. Sitting inside my apartment. I screamed. I ran to my door, still locked. Windows, still shut. I grabbed the letter with shaking hands. No envelope this time. Just a note, folded neatly. I opened it. Did you miss me? My vision blurred. My breath came in short, painful gasps. He had been inside. I ran. Grabbed my keys, my bag, and drove straight to a friend's house across town. I didn't stop shaking until I was inside, the door locked behind me. For a few days, nothing happened. No more letters. No texts. I started to believe maybe it was over. Then, on February 17th, a final letter arrived. Slipped under my friend's door. Inside was a photograph. Me. Asleep. In my bed. Taken from inside my bedroom. I dropped the letter, my hands turning ice cold. At the bottom, one last message was scrawled in red ink. See you tonight. I never went home again. I was never supposed to be alone on Valentine's Day. My boyfriend, Jake, and I had plans, fancy dinner, wine, the whole thing. But at the last minute, he canceled, claiming he had to work late. I'll make it up to you, he promised over the phone. I just can't get out of this shift. I was disappointed but tried to brush it off. It was just another day. I stayed home, ordered takeout, and watched a horror movie to distract myself. That's when I got the first text. Unknown number, I'm sorry he left you alone tonight. I stared at the screen, unease curling in my stomach. Me, who is this? No answer. I told myself it was just a prank. Maybe one of my friends messing with me. Then another text came through. Unknown number, you look so beautiful in that sweater. My heart stopped. I was wearing an oversized red sweater, one Jake had bought me for Christmas. I glanced around the living room, my pulse pounding in my ears. The curtains were drawn. The doors were locked. Another text. Unknown number, don't be scared. I jumped off the couch, grabbing my phone with shaking hands. Me, if this is a joke, it's not funny. Nothing. The apartment felt suddenly too quiet. I moved toward the front door, double-checking the locks, then did the same with the windows. Everything was secure. No signs of anyone outside. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then my phone buzzed again. A photo. It was my living room. Taken from outside the window. The image was grainy, but I could see myself, curled up on the couch, scrolling on my phone. Completely unaware. My breath hitched. I backed away from the window, pressing a hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. Then, another text. Unknown number, why did you get up? I couldn't breathe. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and ran. I didn't care where, I just needed to get out of that apartment. I bolted to my car, locking the doors the second I was inside. My hands trembled as I fumbled to start the engine. Then I saw it. A figure standing across the street. Tall. Motionless. Watching me. My headlights barely touched him, but I could make out the shape of his face. Or at least, I thought it was a face. It was wrong. Stretched. Too smooth. The second my engine roared to life, he moved. Not running. Not walking. Just suddenly closer. I sped off. I didn't stop driving until I reached a 24-hour diner on the other side of town. I parked in the back, my hands still shaking as I pulled out my phone. Another text. Unknown number, I don't like when you run from me. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know what to do. Then another text came through. Unknown number, check the trunk. A scream caught in my throat. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat like it had burned me. My whole body locked up. I didn't want to check. I didn't want to move. But what if someone was in there? I reached for the door handle with trembling fingers. Stepped out into the cold night air. The diner's neon lights flickered above me, casting a dull glow over the parking lot. I could feel my heart hammering. I moved toward the back of my car, every step heavier than the last. When I reached the trunk, I hesitated. Then, slowly, I popped it open. My breath caught in my throat. Inside was a single red rose. And beneath it, a note. One word. Soon. I slammed the trunk shut, scrambling back toward the car. My breath came in ragged gasps as I locked myself inside, my fingers fumbling to dial 911. As the line rang, I looked up. The figure was standing at the edge of the lot. Closer. The dispatcher answered, but I barely registered her voice. The figure tilted its head. And then. It smiled. I always hated working the closing shift, especially on Valentine's Day. I worked at a little diner just outside town, the kind of place that was open late for truckers, night owls, and lonely people who didn't want to go home. Most nights were slow, but Valentine's was always weird. Something about the day brought out the worst in people. Tonight was no different. Couples sat in stiff silence, their forced smiles barely holding up. A man at the counter nursed his coffee like it was the only thing keeping him together. A woman sat alone in the corner booth, her red lipstick smudged as she stared at her phone. Then there was the guy in the back. He had been there for hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. We got plenty of loners. But this guy was different. He hadn't ordered anything except a cup of coffee. He barely touched it. Just sat there, watching me. His dark hoodie was pulled up, casting his face in shadow, but every time I glanced in his direction, I could feel it, his eyes on me. I told myself I was imagining things. Then my coworker, Hannah, nudged me. "That guy is creeping me out," she muttered. I glanced over. He was still staring. "Should I ask if he needs anything?" I asked. Hannah shook her head. "I already did." He just smiled at me and said, "I'm waiting." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Waiting for what?" She shrugged. "No idea. But I'll pay you $20 to take his section." I forced a laugh, trying to shake the feeling crawling over my skin. "No thanks." The diner emptied out as the night dragged on. Soon, it was just me, Hannah, and him. I kept my head down, wiping the counters, hoping he'd get bored and leave. Then my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, you look beautiful tonight." A lump formed in my throat. I turned my back to the counter, my hands slick with sweat. Another message. "Unknown number, I love when you wear your hair down." My hair was down. A shaky breath left my lips. Slowly, I turned my head. The man in the hoodie sat motionless, his phone resting on the table. A smile curled at the edges of his mouth. I bolted to the back room. Hannah was counting the register, barely looking up. "What's up with you?" I think that guy is texting me." She frowned. "Are you sure?" Another buzz. I didn't want to look. "Unknown number, don't run away from me." My stomach dropped. I turned off my phone and gripped the counter to steady myself. Hannah's expression darkened. "I'm calling the manager," she said. She picked up the store phone, but the line was dead. Then, the lights flickered. A sharp, unnatural silence filled the diner. Something was wrong. Hannah swallowed hard. Did we lose power? A soft tap sounded against the window. We both turned. The man in the hoodie was outside now. But he wasn't alone. Another figure stood beside him. Then another. And another. My pulse pounded in my ears. They weren't moving. Just standing there. Watching. Waiting. Then. One of them knocked. A slow, deliberate knock. I grabbed Hannah's arm. "We need to get out of here." She nodded, fumbling for the keys to the back door. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, trying 911. No service. I glanced outside again. They were closer. The first man, the one who had been watching me all night, smiled. His mouth was too wide. Too hungry. Then, the lights went out. Total darkness. Hannah grabbed my wrist. "Run." We sprinted through the back room, fumbling in the dark. A loud bang shook the walls. Then another. They were inside. I yanked open the back door, dragging Hannah with me. Cold air slapped my face as we stumbled into the alley behind the diner. Footsteps followed. Fast. Too fast. We ran. My lungs burned, my vision blurred with panic. I didn't dare look back. Then, Hannah screamed. I turned. She was gone. Just gone. My stomach twisted, my breath coming in short, desperate gasps. A whisper slithered through the darkness. "You should have stayed." I didn't stop. Didn't think. I just ran. By the time I made it to the gas station down the road, my legs nearly gave out. I burst through the doors, gasping for air. The clerk stared at me. "You okay?" I tried to speak. Nothing came out. Then my phone buzzed. With one final message. "Unknown number, see you tomorrow." Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing.